Well, Donald Trump has many critics at home and abroad. He's also been the butt of jokes on shows like Saturday Night Live and with comedians and critics, including Egyptian satirist Bassem Yousef. And he joins me in studio to talk more about this. Bassem, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, one of the reasons that you're here is the Berlin Film Festival. We're going to get to that in a moment. But first, I do want to ask you, you are one of the most famous comedians in the Middle East. You've been famously called the Jon Stewart of Egypt, and your show there had 30 million viewers. You now live in the U.S. What is your take on Donald Trump? Because a lot of people have said that political satire at this point, what do you satirize? I mean, how do you go about making fun of or not of what's happening in the U.S.?
Well, Donald Trump is a very easy joke to make. He is a joke. His campaign for us is a joke. Of course, he's a joke for us, but for his supporters, he is the best leader president can be. I mean, we have to admit that we are living in a bubble. I mean, when he was performing in the primary debates in general elections, we always said there's no way that he's going to win. But we didn't see that his supporters liked everything he said. He had basically based the whole campaign on demagoguery, on we call it xenophobia, call it hate, but for his supporters, that was the best thing ever. I mean, right now, there's a lot of reports that are interviewing his supporters and said he's the best president ever, and he's doing exactly what he has promised on the campaign trail. He is very easy to make fun of, and he reminds us with a lot of what's happening in the Middle East, but we just have to wake up and realize that not because that he's an easy joke to make that he will be impeached soon or anything, because he still have a lot of support within his circle of supporters. So he has been very good for comedy, at least for many comedy jokes.
I have to ask, you were actually at some of Trump's rallies
Yes.
in the summer during the campaign. What was that like?
Oh, it was interesting. It was the same echo chamber that we find in the Middle East. The people who were just parroting the same statements of support of stuff that doesn't really make sense for us, but it makes perfect sense for them. They would support stuff that might be even against their own interests. Most of his supporters are people from middle-class Americans who basically are voting for someone who is bringing all of the big, rich businessmen into power. He is giving tax breaks to the top 10%, and he could be a real threat for them losing their health insurance. But it doesn't matter. They like him because they like what he says. Even if it doesn't make sense for them, it makes perfect sense. He has galvanized people for a common source of hate. Is basically, a lot of people voted for him because they hated the other side.
One common source of hate has turned out to be Muslims. You're a Muslim living in the U.S. How does it feel to be a Muslim in the U.S. at the moment?
Well, for me personally, I mean, I'm living in California, so it's a blue state. I don't really have any sense of discrimination. But as much as we are talking about what Donald Trump rhetoric has done to not just Muslims but other minorities, we should not actually forget or ignore that we in the Arab world and the Muslim world have the same kind of rhetoric. I mean, to be honest, we are afraid that Trump will do to Muslims what many of the majority Muslim countries do to non-Muslims. I mean, there is a hint of racism, a hint of discrimination against Muslims, against other weaker minorities. But we have to admit that we are actually doing the same thing for others. I mean, I've said this many times. Those scenes that we've seen in airports, in JFK, in LAX, those Christian Jews, secular, non-religious people who went out to support Muslims, not because they love Islam or not because they love Muslims, but they are supporting what they think are human values. Yeah. We have not seen many, or I don't think that we will see that anytime soon in many of the Muslim countries, supporting people who are not Muslims to defend their rights. And this has been the problem in the Arab world. There are people who are in the middle, who are trying to support the minorities of the non-Muslim minorities, the rights of the non-Muslim minorities, and they are being crushed by the mainstream religious authorities and and many of the military dictatorships, because it's been used as a tool by the military dictatorships. So we should also address the hypocrisy that we have in the Arab world, and it doesn't mean that we should stop talking about what Donald Trump is doing.
I think we actually have a clip of you speaking to some Muslims in the U.S. about what they think of the Trump presidency. Let's take a look at that.
What's it like here being a Muslim?
I'm not a Muslim.
Not Muslim.
I'm not a Muslim.
I'm not a Muslim.
No, I'm not Muslim.
If you're not Muslims, what religion are you?
Catholic.
I'm Syrian Christian.
Syrian Catholic.
I'm Lebanese, Catholic, and Jewish.
I'm Sikh.
Makes sense. So you're not Muslims. I mean, they're only targeting radical Islamist terrorists, right?
Not at all. Not at all.
What? Why?
I was asked by the flight attendant to please get off the plane, and I asked her why, and she wouldn't tell me why, and she'd say, we don't have to tell you.
Bassem, looking at that very much speaks to the American concept of identity and shifting identities, various identities. What is life like in the U.S. compared to being at home in Egypt, where you had to leave because of apparently what was called insulting Islam and insulting the then president, Morsi?
Yeah, but I actually left after that, after I made fun of the people who came after the Muslim Brotherhood. I didn't leave at the time of Morsi, I left after that. But it is the clip that you just showed that shows that, like, you don't really have to be a Muslim, you just have to look different. You know, those people were not Muslims. They were like Catholic, they were Jewish, they were Sikh. But they were, when hate comes, when xenophobia comes, it doesn't look at your ID card. It doesn't look at like how religious you are. You could be called Muhammad and you could not be religious. You could be atheist, or I mean, you could be someone who looks like a Middle Eastern, but you could be Jewish. It doesn't matter. Actually, as a matter of fact, one of the very first victims of 9/11 hate crimes, after 9/11 happened, one of the very first victims in New York was a Christian Coptic Egyptian, because he looked Middle Eastern, he looked Arab. So when xenophobia comes, it doesn't really discriminate. It comes, it lavishes against everybody, and it is very dangerous. And this is why I'm a big vocal. I'm a bit vocal against this, because it will affect anybody. And all of these people, I mean, it's sad that there's a lot of Arabs who are supporters of Trump.
Yeah,
yes,
indeed.
they say, like, yes, show them. And we have seen how that can bite them in the butt. I mean, there was like a family, a Syrian family, that were denied entry in the United States. They voted for Trump. They are Christians. And they were denied entry into the United States because they looked, they sounded, their names were Middle Eastern.
Right.
It's a very dangerous game to support hate because you think it works well for you, because it doesn't.
It's an important message to take away from that, of course. I do want to ask you about the reason you're in Berlin. There's a documentary playing at Berlinale about your life and work, Tickling Giants. Maybe you could just tell us how important it is to use comedy to tackle some of the problems that you've been tackling.
Well, comedy is a non-violent way to protest, to show your support to a certain cause, to cast your opinion. And I think and we were very happy that we won an award in the Cinema for Peace Film Festival. Sarah Taxler, the director, has been following me for 4 years. Done a wonderful job, and we're very happy that it's finally paying off. And I hope that people will see the movie when it comes out.
All right, Bassem Yousef, thank you so much for joining us on DW today.
Thank you.